there is a kind of regret that makes no noise, my friend. It is not the scandalous mistake that becomes a headline, becomes a joke, and follows an executive around for an entire decade. It is the silent regret, the one that sits in a drawer inside a meeting room at the Jefferson Health Training Complex, waiting for the right moment to be corrected. And now, just weeks away from the final cut down to 53 players, a proposal that started circulating in the Philadelphia media suggests that Howie Roseman has in his hands the chance to erase a decision made in the last draft. One simple trade. 2 second-year players selected 16 picks apart from each other who today occupy completely different places in the plans of their respective teams. And the detail almost nobody is mentioning is that this deal would be made with the very team that took one of the pillars of Philadelphia's defense away this offseason. The truth is that this story has layers that practically nobody is telling you, and the most important one of them directly contradicts the argument used to justify the entire proposal. Before I open all of that up, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now, because over the next few weeks, the Eagles roster is going to be cut to the bone, and you are going to want to be here when the names start falling. To understand the size of this discussion, we need to go back to the 2025 draft. That year, Roseman entered the late rounds with a stated priority: stack depth in the middle of the defense. He had already spent a first-round pick on Jihad Campbell, and he wanted more size, more speed, and more special teams capability in the linebacker room. So in the 5th round, with pick number 161, Philadelphia called the name of a linebacker out of Georgia with a 6'8" wingspan, a 4.58-second 40-yard dash, and a national championship resume on his back. His name is Mondon Jr. And here comes the first piece of data that dismantles part of the narrative. Mondon did not disappear as a rookie. He was on the field for all 17 regular season games, plus the wildcard matchup, piling up 13 tackles in a role tied almost entirely to special teams. That is not a number that impresses on any spreadsheet, but special teams work rarely generates statistics. What generates internal evaluation is reps, reliability, and availability, and he delivered all 3. This training camp, Jordan Davis publicly pointed to Mondon as his sleeper on the defensive side of the ball. Vic Fangio has handed out praise to the linebacker room as a whole, and the very article proposing the trade acknowledges in plain language that Mondon is having an excellent training camp. So how does a player having an excellent camp, praised by an all-pro defensive lineman, become trade currency in the same sentence? The answer is in the math, and the Eagles' math in 2026 is brutal. Zach Bond is an all-pro. Jihad Campbell, a first-round pick, was named to the Professional Football Writers of America All-Rookie team after 76 tackles, 1 interception, and 1 forced fumble in 17 games. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is putting together one of the best camps of his career and is treated internally as a potential starter. Chance Campbell, a former 6th-round pick of the Titans who spent 2025 on the practice squad, received direct praise from the defensive coordinator. And there is still an undrafted rookie out of Alabama, Deontay Lawson, fighting for a spot. Reporters in Philadelphia are describing this as the deepest linebacker room the Eagles have had in decades. When you have 6 legitimate names for 4 or 5 spots, somebody becomes surplus, and market logic says that surplus with a cheap late-round contract is exactly the kind of asset Roseman likes to convert into something else. And the something else in this proposal is a second-year safety who was at Penn State 2 years ago, and today is fighting just to survive the cut in Houston. His name is Jalen Reed. Reed was selected by the Texans in the 6th round of 2025, with pick number 187, 26 spots after Mondon. His rookie year was short and interrupted. 7 games, 14 tackles, and 1 fumble recovery, with an injury pulling him off the field in the middle of the season. Sounds like very little? It depends on how you read it. 14 tackles in 7 games is a per-game rate higher than Mondon's across 17 games, and Reed put up those numbers playing defense, not just special teams. Analysts covering the Texans described his production as solid within a small sample, and he was even treated as one of the finds of the 3rd day of that draft. Reed's problem is not talent, it is population. Houston built one of the most crowded safety rooms in the league. Callan Bullock, Jalen Peter, a recently signed veteran you know very well, plus MJ Stewart, Kayvon Merriweather, and a 5th-round pick from this year's draft. In the most recent projections, Reed shows up in the bubble category, The group of players who might simply not be on the roster in Week 1. A player the Texans are unlikely to use, on a team that desperately needs help in the middle of the defense. Are you seeing the symmetry of this proposal? Now comes the part that gives this whole story its flavor. That recently signed veteran in Houston, the guy who now holds one of the starting jobs in that secondary, is Reed Blankenship. That is right, my friend. The safety who spent years being the brain of the Eagles' defense left in free agency and went to Houston, of all places. And Philadelphia also lost Sidney Brown in a separate trade. In other words, the proposal going around is for the Eagles to negotiate with the very team that took their starter in order to receive back the player left over in that room's waiting line. It is the definition of buying back the flower you handed over yourself, and the need is real. This is not blog invention. A breakdown from Philly Voice ranked safety as the worst starting position group on the entire Eagles roster in 2026, with a comfortable margin over the second place. Andrew Mukuba, last year's second-round pick, is the favorite for one of the jobs after 46 tackles and 2 interceptions in 11 games as a rookie. But his medical history is frightening. Injuries to the shoulder, the hamstring, and the fibula, ending the season on injured reserve. The second spot is an open tug-of-war between Marcus Epps and Michael Carter, with Cooper DeJean handling the position only in base defense. Fangio himself, when asked about the competition, answered that it is open and then listed 6 different names who would have a chance. When a coordinator with Fangio's resume lists 6 names, he is not praising depth. He is telling you that nobody has taken the job. But, and this is the but that separates analysis from gossip, the central argument of the proposal is factually broken. The original text claims that Mondon currently sits behind Chance Campbell in the internal hierarchy and is at risk of being waived. The first depth chart released by the franchise itself ahead of the preseason opener shows the opposite. Mondon is listed ahead of Chance Campbell. And the reporting from Reuben Frank of NBC Sports Philadelphia is even more direct, indicating that Mondon most likely already has his spot locked up, and that the real dilemma for the Eagles is deciding whether it is worth carrying 5 linebackers in order to keep Chance Campbell. The premise is inverted. The player the proposal treats as expendable is precisely the one who is safe. And that is exactly why we need to be fair and transparent here, looking at the other side of the argument. First, this is not an official proposal from the Eagles front office or from the Texans. It is an editorial idea published by an analyst, one of 5 suggestions on a list, and there is no indication whatsoever that the 2 teams have even discussed it. Treating it as a back-channel rumor would be dishonest with you. Second, even if the hierarchy is inverted in the original text, the value logic is not wrong. Trading surplus from a saturated position for depth at a fragile one is exactly the kind of move Roseman has made repeatedly over the past several years, and he has never been afraid of stacking up young defensive backs. Third, Jaylen Reed is not a solution at the starting level. He is a developmental bet with a 7-game sample and a recent injury history. Anyone expecting him to walk in and settle the job next to Mukuba is creating an expectation the numbers do not support. And fourth, losing Mondon would carry a hidden cost on special teams. He played 18 games counting the regular season and the playoffs, almost all of them in that role. Special teams decide January games in Philadelphia, and replacing reliability in that area is harder than the fan base tends to imagine. So the question I leave with you, Eagles fan, is a double one. If Howie Roseman really does call Houston, do you hand over a second-year linebacker who is playing well in camp to bring in a second-year safety who was left over in a crowded room? Or do you believe the safety position is unresolved enough to justify a bigger move, one involving a draft pick instead of a swap of late-round pieces? And most of all, do you trust the pairing of Mukuba and Epps to hold up the back end of Vic Fangio's defense in January? Leave your opinion in the comments. Do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I will be back later to update you with the latest Eagles news.